before that process. That is the way to go. Honorable Chair, I had the opportunity to visit so many places last year. You enter a town and you have a heap higher than this building. And we have a policy and initiative to make sure we evacuated most of these heaps, because they became part of our skyline in our towns and villages. And I must state that we've been successful in clearing this, because most of it was compost by the time that we touched these heaps. Some had been there for 100 years, some 50 years, some 30 years, some 60 years. So we start from there as a medium measure, and then the long term will be the gasification and the incineration. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. My second question is, you've been mentioning the National Sanitation Authority, and you agree with me that it's a major institutional structure that is expected to address the poor sanitation in Ghana. How will its establishment assist the NMDAs to effectively manage their waste?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are envisaging that the authority will have districts and regional offices to work hand in glove with the MMDAs to make sure they direct them and support them. And we don't have one size fits all for every place. So they will then design the strategies to combat waste in those districts and regions. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm done, and I'm adding my voice again to congratulate you. The honorable nominee is an action woman, and I know that is going to perform in her second term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Honorable nominee, in your response to an answer posed to you on access to water, you indicated that water coverage in urban Ghana is estimated around 93%. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't say so. The honorable member quoted an earlier submission. And that is correct.
So what is the coverage?
We have not, Mr. Chairman, we have the access figure and the coverage figure. The access figure covers all types of provisions of water. I could drill boreholes in my house to use as part of the access. NGOs are doing their own, it's part of the access. So we put all the access together, and that is a study done by the Statistical Survey and UNICEF. We are also compiling our list. I'll put our average to 78–80%. We are yet to get the final figures. Thank you, Mr.
So which one gave you the 93%?
Mr. Chairman, to repeat, it is the total coverage of water. Sorry, total access to water. Yes.
I'm asking this question because UNICEF and WHO in 2015 provided the same figure. I would like to read. According to UNICEF, WHO in 2015, access to improved drinking water in Ghana is estimated around 89%, 93% urban coverage, and 84% rural coverage. So is it not the same figure you are telling us today, or is it different?
Mr. Chairman, I'm giving the source, UNICEF and the Statistical Survey. We are compiling our own reports also to support that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Now my second question has to do with not the second question. Proceed, but the third question. Mr. Chairman, you have the platform, so I would like.
Yes, I have the platform.
A portion of the World Bank's $570 million economic pump for Ghana was to enable Accra become the premier city in Africa. Specifically, $200 million was to finance the Greater Accra and Integrated Development Initiative. This initiative is a transformative urban project tailored to bolster the city to become safer, more resilient, and cleaner. What is the status of this project?
Mr. Chairman, the component for my ministry is $43 million, and I think I spoke about it earlier. That is to take care of the Odo Basin, to clean it up and to cut the heaps of waste that we see around the basin. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You claim that your ministry had 43 million out of $200 million. How was that 43 million applied?
Mr. Chairman, I have given the components out is to cut about 5 feet around the Tantam and then the Odo Basin, and it's also to clean up the Odo Basin to make the channels open for water to flow in. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to my granddaughter, who's the nominee. Mr. Chairman, this is not ready. And I was a question on the desalination plant. You indicated that they had started producing 50,000 liters a day, as against 60,000. Now, what was the reason for the reduction in their production currently? And earlier on, there was some concern about the charges that they were demanding from Ghana Water, the fees that they were demanding from Ghana Water as per their contract. Have those challenges been resolved and the fees rationalized now to make it more affordable for Ghana Water?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The desalination plant is producing 50,000 cubic meters, and I'll say it's semi-normal in the sense that there are production losses that are involved, and the capacity is always different from the production figure. These are the issues that are at stake. There's a team working on that, so I'm sure very soon they will finish their work and bring us the report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, just two follow-up. There is a team working on what? Then two related to the Honorable Osler's first question on rationalizing the charges in the particular industry. Are you aware that the PRC have some tariff dedicated to desalination, and it is still part of it, and Ghana Water takes the levy as determined by the PURC? What is happening to that levy relative to the question she asked earlier? Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I meant that there is a committee, including Ghana Water, the Attorney General, PURC, and the World Bank Group, looking at the issues that have been raised. There's also the issue of boron that is also being looked at. So that is what I meant. Honorable Chairman.
Our landfill sites have been reported to be full, and there are management challenges for our landfill sites. The issues of arrears owed to environmental service providers, leachage into the ground, pollution of groundwater, the health impact of the operations of landfill sites and residents around those landfill sites. What is being done by your ministry to re-engineer the landfill sites to solve these perennial problems?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe this is a very worrying issue, and we have, in a major way, intervened in the landfill site of Oti and Fufu. Indeed, leachate is toxic, and we should not, in any way, allow it to seep into water bodies through the cracks in the soil to contact sources. That is why we need to engineer our landfill sites and ultimately eliminate them through the long-term solutions that we have proffered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What's your relationship with the Environmental Service Providers Association? And we did ask the Minister for Environment Designate when he appeared before the committee to whether he would work to promote source separation of waste, to promote recycling of some of these waste products that we produce. Would you work with them, the service providers, local government and NEST, to look into this area, either by litigation or public education, either legislation or public education?
Mr. Chairman, I believe we have already started with this sorting. We have pilot projects going on, but in our homes, we are all guilty. We use one bin to put in our daily waste after the chores in our homes. So it's the way to go finally, because it's become very, very important, because the compost plants, their experiences are such that ultimately get this going, and it's part of the policies of the sanitation authority to look at this, because we need to do sorting, especially in our institutions, in our schools. We started at the medical school, and it's going well. We started in some schools as well. So in our homes, very soon we'll have to have about 3 bins, one for plastics and bottles, and one for paper, and then one for the organic waste, the leftovers from our food and bamboo and our plant and tosafi and all those pieces of leftovers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I am longing for an opportunity to congratulate the honorable nominee for the public chastising and very bold leadership that she exhibited when she was aviation minister, when British Airways was maltreating Ghanaian travelers, when there were bed bugs in their flights and all kinds of poor customer service. She stood up for Ghanaians and she stood up for our travelers, and I have enormous pride, and I'm very, very pleased to put this on record that she's one of the bold, dynamic leaders this country needs. So I want to congratulate her highly for that action. Mr. Chairman, my first question will be from the Presidential Transition Team report on infrastructure. dated December 29, 2020, at page 15 of the report, under the Honorable Nominees sector, critical issues requiring attention within 100 days. The report indicates that the free water for October to December 2020, it remains outstanding. Is the nominee able to indicate to this committee how many beneficiaries there were for the free water program, how much it costs the taxpayer, and whether she thinks that payment can be made within the 100 days, as this report is urgent? We've done 54 days already.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Honorable, for the kind words. Yes, the 100 days, I think, starts, Honorable Chair, from the day the minister is sworn into office. As I'm a caretaker minister, if I even chase the Honorable Minister for caretaker Minister for Finance, he won't be able to help much. So I'm hoping that as soon as you are kind enough to approve the nominees and the staff work, this will be sorted out, if it hasn't been done already. And the amount of money that we spent on the good people of Ghana to make sure there's no outbreak of cholera and dysentery, etc., etc., during this COVID period was 840 million Ghana cedis. For urban water, we have 10 million people that benefited. The figure for the rural water, I'm yet to get the final figure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the Honourable Nominee will furnish us with the rural water one later. My second question, Honourable Nominee, is to kindly take you back to the matter of making Accra the cleanest city. You did indicate earlier that we are on course, but respectfully, I want to draw your attention to His Excellency the President's specific promise that it was time-bound. He said by his first term, by the end of his first term. So when you tell us today, after the first term, that we are on course, there is something respectfully wrong with that. I hold in my hands the President's State of the Nation address, the message on the state of the nation, delivered to Parliament on the 21st of February 2019. At page 14 of the statement, third paragraph, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I quote, "Last year, I reiterated before you my pledge of improving sanitation in the country and making Accra the cleanest city in Africa by the end of my first term," unquote. So, Mr. Chairman, the nominee will have to tell us the status of this promise, particularly when, very briefly, the Chairman, with your permission, I sent my research team around town this morning, and you can see this is Domi Market at 9:26 a.m. An eyesore indeed, very, very ugly state of sanitation. I also have here, this is Domi Railway at 9:10 a.m. today. I also have here Accra Tudu Lane at 2 minutes past 10. And I saw the very terrible situation about our sanitation. This is 9:40 a.m. Kwame Nkrumah Circle, very busy transportation hub. This is 9:50 a.m. Kwame Nkrumah Circle, very heart-wrenching, very terrible. This is the state of our sanitation. The President made a specific promise by end of first term. Can you please tell us exactly what the situation is with this specific time-bound promise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, indeed. The president didn't only say that he will make Accra the cleanest, he would want to make Accra the cleanest city. He said the whole country needs to be clean. And I think the president's declaration, it was up to us, the stakeholders and the key players, to do our work. As the Honorable Minister has exhibited, we also do monitoring around. I will not doubt all these pictures. As I speak, our monitors are in the field, and when they come back, we deal with the specific the metropolitan or in Accra, in the big cities, we deal with them. They do have a challenge with solid waste. That is why we need this huge pillar of sanitation authority to help strategize and direct affairs, especially in the business, central business districts, the CBDs. They do have a huge problem. And then one area that we have identified is that they don't even work on Sundays. Those who hold the franchise, we are still negotiating with them. I must pay tribute to the contractors who, through their association, have gotten some of these contracts to up their game, and we mean to also emphasize our monitoring units to make sure they move around, and before sunrise, all these things shouldn't be on our books, I should say. They will give excuses for logistics. We've taken notes of their challenges, and I'm sure that very soon we'll find long-lasting, sustainable solutions to them. On the President's declaration, I think, like I said, I want to reiterate and emphasize that it's a very bold declaration, and we need all of us. The motto is keep Ghana clean, and the answer is play your part. You know, these are the areas that we need to emphasize and send logistics to, and we are not oblivious of that. Thank you, Honorable, for your observations, and we'll tackle that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, my final question is on the matter of compost plants. I see from the Presidential Task Force report at page 14 that you state, and I quote, construction of integrated recycling and compost plants in all regional capitals. You do not provide details, no timelines. Can you kindly expatiate on this project? What is the model? Is it a PPP? How much will it cost? And what are the timelines, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, indeed. The President was gracious enough to cut the sword for all the compost plants, and it's a PPP. The private sector, led by the ESPA chairman, the JOSCON group of companies, they have come with us to do these projects. And I must say that the ministry did some research and shared it with them, and they took the results running. And I must doff my hat off to them, because they have really, really put their money where their mouth is. And government, like the President said at the short-cutting ceremonies, every company or individual who is prepared to come in to do this business, government will support. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The cost varies, but averagely it's about $15 million. Yes.
I'm grateful, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Gisela first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Gisela, did I pronounce
Oh, okay,
it?
sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lift Pierre.
Speak true, right, wrong, follow the king.
It's a coded. Honorable nominee, you mentioned that the water interventions in my constituency under community water, actually they are not working well. I can give you a whole list of communities, so maybe you can ask community water to go back and check the reasons why it's not working as well as it should be.
Sure, old girl, I'll do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to know what the policy on marine, let me call it marine sanitation, sanitation at the beaches. We have a 550-kilometer shoreline with quite a number of communities, obviously, earning their living off the beaches. But over time, when the fisherfolk go to sea and they put the nets, there's a lot of plastics. What has been the policy over the past 4 years? And what gaps were there? And what do you intend to change or amend going forward? Because I believe that for those of us who wish to promote tourism in our constituencies, the beaches are a very key part of that agenda. So we'd like to know what the policy has been and what it is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe I have spent sleepless nights on some of these challenges. And we know, I always say, that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Where people have succeeded, we have done some research to share with the ministry that has the plastic policy in its bosom. The task force that we also set up includes the Ministry of Tourism, and we have encouraged them to also engage with hoteliers. And Labadi, I must mention, because it's commendable, they have taken charge of their section on their shoreline. And I believe that's the way to go is to make sure the plastic policy is operationalized to take care of the plastics before they get into our drains to be washed by rainwater into the sea. Also, the compost plants that we can set up to recycle plastics should also be stretched to include a number of businesses that can go into that. I believe the honorable MPs who are also interested in setting up recycling of plastics in their constituencies should also do that up, and the business community. So I believe these are my thoughts on that. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
A follow-up question to this. Is there no possible way that perhaps employment opportunities can be gained by your policy adjustments? Because the beaches are in the communities and they are needed for the necessary agendas and they must be kept clean. Is there no opportunity for employment and possible, something creative that will be able to sustain the whole activity of cleanliness at the beaches?
Yes, that is a good way to look at it. Like I said, it creates jobs. The recycling compost plants that we have set up around the country will get fertilizer to be sold. The plastics can be turned into chairs and bowls, etc., etc. That's why I made a statement earlier on that waste is wealth, depending on how you look at it. So it's a good point to note. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ajari?
Yes. Techima North, is that right?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Congratulations, Honorable Nominee. I take you back to rural Ghana, where I come from, and still on open defecation. You indicated that you'd be happy to have about 1 million household toilets. Can you tell us how you're going to finance this? Because this is a real need for the rural community. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think when it comes to the provision of some of these essential structures, we can follow up on other people who have succeeded to do this. There's always a component of GOG and a component of funding by donor partners. I see these also as a public good because we need to give dignity to ourselves. I know of MPs who have built places of convenience. I built one in my earlier life as an MP, and I believe this Gamma project that we did, MP for Abekuma West, and then other MPs also allow their constituents to benefit from the system. So this is my take also on that. It's a major, major project, and the earlier we did that, the better for all of us. So I agree with you. We'll give you the this thing on it, the talk on it, so that we can relate and then see what can be done, especially in the constituency. Thank you, Mr. One last. My next and last will be about refuse dumps. Refuse dumps. Yes. It looks like we are living with refuse dumps in our community without any attempt at collecting them or without any attempt at making sure that we even have these big refuse, the metal bowls for the collection, so they are dumped everywhere in the community, and we are living with it and getting sick. What will be your policy, especially in the rural communities, to ensure that we don't live with these? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe my honorable member is talking about the skips that are put at strategic places to collect that's the way to go. Apart from that, optionally, you can have the cells that we've already sent a circular around all over Ghana to make sure that MMD is practiced at 8 meters by 4 meters to put in the organic waste to form a compost plant traditionally for the communities. So the skips, we are trying to also bring in the private sector to make sure the private sector to make sure we have enough to go around. I think the arrangements are quite advanced, and we'll keep you posted as we go on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Boku Central. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. That's the question. Sanitation, waste management, toilets. Why don't you just, as a ministry, try and enforce the building regulations that require that there should be a toilet in every building? You can't hear me?
No.
I'm saying, why don't you just try to enforce the law that in the building regulations that requires that every house should have a toilet built into it? Why don't you just do this simple act?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I got the honorable member right, that's why can't we enforce this regulation that every house should have a toilet? I think it's to not only enforce that, but to make sure that no permit is given to any building that doesn't have. So it's for us all to make sure we insist on that, especially once it's the law. So I agree with you 110%. We need to enforce that, and that is why we need this pillar to also help and give support to the MMDs to enforce some of these laws, because it's automatic. At times they go with the design, with the place of convenience, and then for hire, and you cannot tell people not to sleep in rooms. So essentially, we need to enforce that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Honorable Susan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Honorable nominee, what are some of the challenges of wetlands in Ghana, and how do you intend confronting those challenges?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have the Ramsar sites, the Ada area, etc., etc. But I hear they are under is it environment? Yes, EPA. But we'll give them the task force. That's why the task force is formed, because we all have interests in. I was fighting over that, but I hear it's under EPA. But once it's a wetland or it has some amount of water, we should also be interested. Thank you.
Okay. So in an earlier answer to a question, you mentioned that you would love that we would have about 1 million household toilets. Should Ghanaians be looking forward to 1 million household toilets under a jurisdiction for the next 4 years?
Mr. Chairman, it is my wish. So we'll have to look at the modus operandi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Honorable nominee, perhaps not to take away kind words, my very good friend and colleague Honorable Ablakwa said about your boldness, but just to also perhaps draw your attention to a number of issues that have also made headlines about the perhaps boldness that you show in your course of due be of worry, especially when you recall your issue with Ms. Rahina too, the journalist with multimedia, and some other developments and reports with the way you relate. But my question specifically will relate to the household toilets, because I'm just entitled to one. Household toilets that you speak of. I do know that somewhere we adopted the community-led total sanitation approach. It was scaled up in 2015, and the results show that it improved sanitation a lot, especially in relation to reduction in open defecation. Many NGOs, Plan Ghana, Water Aid, RING, CR, have all supported this initiative. But then, government through the special initiative have also been embarking on community toilets, awarded many contracts to build community toilets. Isn't that in conflict with this CLTS model that we were supposed to have used, and how have you dealt with that conflict as minister, and what is the assurance that we really have one policy moving forward to deal with open defecation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the problem is so huge that it needs a multifaceted approach. Hence the CLT approach, as well as the UNICEF, USAID, and all these NGOs, and the special initiatives. What I did was to collate all that they did. So if you look at our figure, it's 125,000. But if you add everything, it goes to about 147,000. So I believe we need every hand in solving the open defecation problem. When it is slow in an area, another fast area shows it up. So that is that. And then the headline news, I think, and we settled that. Thank you.
You didn't get it. I'm talking about the conflict between the approach that the CLTS is adopting to deal with open defecation, which is supported by all these NGOs, as against government's push to construct public toilets, which the CLTS was supposed to replace.
No, Honorable Chairman, but like I said, I will go for everything that will go to let Ghana be off this radar of open defecation. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable nominee, my question is on open drains. I believe we are in the 21st century in this country, and we're still constructing open drains in the country. Would you say that there's a direct correlation between that and our poor sanitation situation? And what will be your plans should you be should you confirm to work with the Minister of Roads to ensure that at least the drains that are being constructed are covered in order to reduce the sanitation problems that they currently pose, because most open drains, they've become mosquito breeding grounds, and it has a direct effect on our environment. The mantra is we are as healthy as our environment. But if the environment is so sick, how do we stay well? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question of, I think I'll add open gutters. I am more concerned about the open gutters than the open drains, because the drains are for storm rain water. We cannot do away with the open drains. Otherwise, we'll be flooded in no time when it rains. I think the open gutters, they are archaic, they are passé, and we need to have the new design of roads engineering. And one typical example is the one we have at the Abugloshi market. It's a modern design, and you see that the water passes through some vents. You don't have the open gutters for people to either pour in rubbish or litter. And I found out one thing also during the course of my tour of all the MMDs in Accra. These flying plastics, as soon as they touch water, they get stuck. So the roads minister, I've had engagements with him, and I think he's taking it on board. But with the drains, they are under, between roads and works and housing mainly. They have the hydro unit to take care of that. But essentially, that is for storm water, which we need to have to be able to contain the rainwater. You know, we are in the tropical area, and we need that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bring me that. Very well. Honorable Chief Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman, sorry, I was in an earlier meeting with the Speaker, so if I ask any question that has been asked already, I hope the nominee will forgive me. Mr. Speaker, I just want to find out from, Mr. Chairman, I just want to find out from the nominee. She's been in this ministry for 4 years, and now she's been nominated again. Oh, about 3 years. Oh, okay. Oh, 2 years. Yeah, because she was at aviation before. Yeah, sorry. And now she's been nominated to stay in that ministry. Are there some major challenges that you can tell us that confront that ministry, and how you hope into the next few years you may be able to overcome them?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the major problem, I should say, is funding. If we have funding today, we'll cover the 1 million. And I know the funds compete with other sectors. So that is an area that we need massive support for. And I must say that His Excellency the President has placed sanitation and water on his priority list. So we will overcome that, I hope, when funds are available. The next major headache is, in quotes, the stubborn nature of some of us, meaning a litter bin. With regard to the littering, they will still throw things around and turn around to complain. That is also a headache. And we tried to solve that through the means of engaging people to do attitudinal change exercises, and the costs. One bill that they proposed was about 10 million cedis, and I said 10 million can build so many toilets, so I'd rather go to the ground, solve the problems, etc. So that is also one. It's just like the wearing of masks that people are refusing to wear. You cannot beat them up, but the law will catch up with them. So the littering is also one issue, and that has to do with the solid waste. Then we come to the issue of this open defecation, which we have talked a lot about here. And as for the other, I think we can overcome, because we are working perfectly with the private sector to make sure they also show up the statistics that we need positively in this area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, yes, she mentioned the challenges, but I haven't heard clearly how she intends to deal with them. Because I'm a financing, it's always been with every ministry. But the nature of her sector, what innovative things can she put in place to improve the financing? Because you will know, the ones we rely on GOG, I mean, they can never be enough. So if you continue to rely on GOG, then after probably 4 years of your presidency, not much will change.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is true, indeed. That is why we have a system called the polluter pays. For instance, in the area of solid waste, we all pay when the bins are lifted in our homes, from our homes. But there are vulnerable areas that I believe we should all see it as a public good. And we are going to incorporate that into the authority when we bring it up for discussion, so that the vulnerable areas can be also catered for, because public health is essential. We also have, in the other areas of challenge, like I talked to my colleague, former colleague, the health minister, and we talked about those of our compatriots I just want to find out from Mr. Chairman. I just want to find out from the nominee. To 4,432. It's now 503. And we have the tunnel, the BIA, the PRA, and these are the figures we have as at July 2020. We'll be getting the figures for 2020, December, and the
I think that the nominee doesn't have the data for River Pra. Is that the case?
I have. But I just have the PRA. You are interested in the PRA.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the PRA River Asin, as Ghana Water has an intake at Daboase, I'll use that as the example. That was 825 NTU in February 2020, but in July it was 434. And Chifu Praso used to be 1,595. It's now 465. So, Mr. Chairman, in essence, the war that the President declared was successful in a way vis-à-vis our water bodies, and we should continue to support